Okay, so then I'll turn over to Andy, because there are definitely lots of pros and cons to when one considers non-executive roles. So Andy, I'll let you take us through that.
Yes, thank you. So I think really important that you firstly consider why you are doing this. And as I said at the outset, I think a non-executive position is often seen as a very nice thing to do, almost a good accessory, but actually really important that you fully understand what you're signing up to do and why you're doing it. And I'm going to make an assumption here that there are probably three reasons when we think about non-executive positions why people who are currently in an executive role might be doing it. And yeah, number one is probably personal and career development. And that may be because you're part of the succession plan to join the main board of your own organization. It could be that you're beginning to think about retirement, and that therefore, if you want to build a portfolio career, certainly this is a very good thing to do whilst you're in employment, because actually it's much easier to secure your first non-executive position whilst you're employed full-time and you are current. And then thirdly, I suppose, and I put it there in the pros, yeah, tactical career advancement. So it may be that you're wanting to keep your options open and take on a non-executive position that would actually give you knowledge of an additional sector. So as an example, you might be an executive, say, in the financial services sector full-time. You secure a position and as a non-executive director in the retail and consumer sector, you then have experience of two sectors and therefore are open, or certainly more attractive to organizations like ourselves, because you bring that broader experience. So I think sort of firstly working it whilst you're doing it is very important. The networking side, and I'll touch on this later, you're going to have to work, reasonably hard to make it known that this is something that you're looking for, and you need to maybe squeeze your network harder than you've ever done, both the network that you have, which you develop yourself, but also the network that exists maybe within your own organization, and actually looking at the network of your own board. The learning side, I think, is really key, and certainly for the people that I talk to that have done this, that tends to be maybe not why they go into it, but certainly the thing that they most enjoy. So actually learning potentially for the first about a brand new sector, getting be it once a month, once a quarter, biannually, a refreshing insight, getting to step away from the coal face for a few days, and actually just get a totally different experience, and then potentially, of course, bring that learning of a different sector back to the mothership, which may enhance your own organization and certainly will maybe enable you to look at things slightly differently. Remuneration is always controversial, particularly so in boards. If we think about the UK, then most board directors would think they are underpaid for the risk and the amount of time that they are giving to their non-executive role. If you look at the US, by and large, most non-executive directors would be very happy with their remuneration and would think it was reflective of the risk and the time that was being given. If you look at places like Europe, again, they would probably think as though they were being under awarded, and Asia at the moment seems to be a combination of all of those. Tactical career advancement I touched on, so I'm going to move on to the risks involved. And again, this is specifically for people that are in a full-time position. So time management is critical here, and if it wasn't clear, your priority has to be your executive role in your full-time position. So very important you take on a role which you can manage alongside the day job, and if things get challenging within the day job, then it's the non-executive role that may have to be put to one side, certainly not the other way around. So it's really important that you take on something which is rewarding but probably not exciting, and something which is going to be relatively stable whilst you have that full-time commitment. All of you will be familiar with increasing regulation, increasing scrutiny, and this is only going one way, not just from the regulators that exist in countries, but certainly the shareholder bodies that look at pay or look at voting or any of the things that boards are involved in. And whilst it may be cooling a little bit within financial services, I think what we're seeing across the board is more regulation and more scrutiny in pretty much every other sector. And that could be regulation from an ESG perspective, not just in terms of the actual business. Activism is also something that now, I think certainly in the US and the UK, we are getting increasingly used to. And activists are increasingly known as value creators rather than the pirates or corporate raiders that they were seen to be about 5 years ago. And I think you should assume that if you're on a board, you will have an approach, welcome or not, from an activist at some point. So absolutely critical that you have that strategy, defense strategy in a drawer, proverbial drawer, for when that happens. Reputation, again, I think is an obvious one, but you do need to think worst case scenario. And if something does go wrong, making sure that your reputation is intact. And therefore, whilst you're often on the outside as a non-executive director, do make sure that you can influence exactly how management operate, and you have that level of control. And so if something does go wrong, you can at the very least do the right thing as far as you are concerned. And then if things go really wrong, and this may sound very basic, making sure that you have the correct amount of director and officer cover, which I think is a general term which is understood globally, making sure that you have the absolute right amount of cover. So in the event that something does happen, which is going to put the organization financially at stress, and then potentially yourself as a director of that public company, just make sure that the right protections in place.